My name is Casey Bitkeys, and 6 months after my parents left my kids eating on the floor like strays, I sold the very house they were living in, right out from under them. As they stood on the curb watching strangers tour their beloved home, I just looked at Michelle and said, "Now you know how it feels to be left behind." Before I take you back to how this all began, tell me, where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments. And if you've ever had to set a boundary with family, I want to hear your story too. Let's talk about what happens when you finally say no more. It was a Thursday evening, spring rain misting the windows, the kind that makes the air smell like wet pavement and old regrets. I stood in my parents' living room holding my breath like it might soften the blow. My two kids, Ari, 8, and Leela, 6, sat quietly on the couch, dressed and ready with their backpacks. My husband was traveling, and tonight I had a business dinner that wasn't optional. I'd been working for months on a partnership deal that could shift my entire career. One evening, just one. "Dad, I just need you and Mom to keep an eye on them for a few hours," I said gently, trying not to sound desperate, even though I was. "I'll be back before 10. They'll probably be asleep before you even have to do anything." My father Leonard leaned back in his recliner like I just asked him to carry cinder blocks up a mountain. "You expect us to watch someone else's brats?" He scoffed, not even looking up from the game on TV. My jaw clenched. "They're your grandchildren." "Which doesn't make them my problem," he muttered. Mom, perched on the edge of her armchair with her ever-present glass of Pinot, let out a long, theatrical sigh. "We're too old for this nonsense, Casey. Babysitting, at our age." "I'm sorry, sweetheart, but that's just not fair." They were both in their early 60s, retired early thanks to a chunk of my salary helping cover their mortgage the past few years. The irony stung. Across the room, Michelle, my younger sister, was sprawled on the sectional, scrolling on her phone with one foot tucked under the other like she owned the place. Her tone was syrupy sweet when she spoke, but her eyes never left her screen. "Why don't you just hire a sitter like the rest of us do?" I looked at her, trying to keep my voice even. "Because it's last minute, and you know how hard it is to find someone I trust." She glanced up finally. "Sounds like poor planning to me." That did it. My heartbeat picked up, the way it does when you realize someone isn't just unwilling to help, they're enjoying your struggle. Michelle didn't have a job. She had 3 kids and a nanny who worked full-time, courtesy of our parents' early retirement gifts. I'd helped pay for the first year of her childcare so she could get back on her feet. That was 4 years ago. I turned to my kids. "Go grab your coats." Leela looked at me with her big brown eyes, her thumb still tucked near her mouth. "Are we going with you, Mama?" "No, baby," I said softly. "You're staying here just for tonight." "Will Aunt Michelle play games with us?" Ari asked hopefully. Michelle snorted. "Yeah, no, I've got plans." I looked back at my parents. "I'm not asking you to raise them. I'm asking for one evening. I've supported this family for years. The least you can do is help me this once." Dad didn't answer. Mom took another sip of wine, and Michelle just smirked. I bent down, kissed Leela's soft cheek, then Ari's. "Be good," I whispered, my throat tightening. As I walked to the door, my hands trembling, my mother called out, "Don't be dramatic, Casey, you chose this life." I paused for a second, but I didn't turn around. "Yeah," I said. "I did. And I'm about to choose differently." Outside, the rain had picked up, cold and sharp. I slid behind the wheel, put the car in drive, and didn't look back. But as I merged onto the freeway toward downtown, my heart stayed tangled in that living room, wedged between my children's hope and my family's cruelty. Tonight, I was going to close a major business deal. But what I really needed was to close the door on this toxic dynamic. By the time I reached the express lane, the city skyline had begun to twinkle, one window at a time lighting up like fireflies. The downtown buildings always looked beautiful after rain, glass and concrete bathed in silver, slick streets reflecting neon in fractured ribbons. But inside my car, all I saw was red. Not the brake lights ahead, but that seething, quiet red. The kind that starts behind your ribs and climbs your throat when you've finally had enough. I adjusted my rearview mirror and caught my own eyes for a second. Tired, sharpened, sad. "They can't watch my kids for one night," I muttered to myself, fingers tightening around the steering wheel until my knuckles blanched. After everything, it wasn't rhetorical. I said it aloud like maybe the words would help it make sense. Like maybe I was still hoping there was a version of my parents that hadn't completely calcified into selfishness. But the math was simple. I paid off their second mortgage 3 years ago when Dad's pension got hit. It's temporary, they said, just until we get back on our feet. I covered Michelle's credit card debt twice. Once when she quit her job at the bridal boutique to try something new, and once when her new thing turned out to be MLM skincare she abandoned after 2 months. No thank you card, no offer to repay, just more entitlement. And still I kept showing up. Dinners, gifts, birthdays, holidays. Babysitting Michelle's kids at the drop of a hat. Hosting Thanksgiving while Michelle brought store-bought pies and our parents gushed about her helping. But tonight, I needed help just once. And suddenly they were too old and my kids were someone else's brats. I blinked against the sting in my eyes. I wasn't crying. Not yet. Just that heavy tightness, like something had wedged into my chest and refused to budge. The car filled with the soft hum of a jazz station I hadn't changed in weeks. I let it play low, just enough to take the edge off the silence. My GPS pinged the next turn, reminding me I was almost there. The restaurant, business dinner, right. I glanced at the passenger seat where my notes were clipped neatly in a leather folder. The partnership deal I'd spent the last 6 months building. A strategic marketing merger with a firm twice our size, which would finally put our boutique agency on the national radar. If tonight went well, I'd land the role of senior partner. And yet all I could think about was Leela's little voice, asking if Michelle would play games with them. Ari's hopeful eyes like maybe tonight would be the time Grandma said yes. Why did they have to ask? Why wasn't that love automatic? The restaurant came into view, glowing gold through the rain-smeared windshield. Elegant. Polished. Just like I'd dressed tonight. Sleek navy suit, gold hoops, the good heels I reserve for serious meetings and even more serious impressions. I eased into valet, handed off the keys, and stood under the awning for a moment, letting the city air cool my face. 1 deep breath. 2. Smile, Casey, I whispered to myself, forcing a practiced grin. Tonight, you're not a daughter, you're not a sister, you're the closer. Inside, the warmth of the restaurant wrapped around me like velvet, dim lights, wood paneling, the low murmur of conversations that cost more per word than my kids' school tuition. I spotted my CEO near the private room entrance, chatting with the potential partners. I slipped into the role effortlessly, greeting everyone, shaking hands, weaving charm with precision. Years of experience had taught me how to compartmentalize. But even as the evening flowed, wine poured, compliments exchanged, laughter staged like set pieces, I found myself drifting. Between bites of ahi tuna and boardroom banter, my mind wandered back to that living room. To the way Michelle's lips curled just slightly when she said, "Poor planning." To how my father didn't even glance up from the game. "You chose this life," my mother had said. Yes, I did. I chose to build a career when no one believed I could. I chose stability, even when it meant late nights, guilt, and sacrifice. I chose to stay strong when everything around me, especially family, felt fragile and conditional. But I never chose to be used. And maybe, I thought as the waiter cleared our plates and the deal leaned toward a yes, maybe it was time to stop letting them pretend I had. It was nearly 10:30 by the time I pulled back into the driveway. The porch light was off. The blinds drawn. The entire house looked like it had gone to sleep hours ago, which, to be honest, was what I was hoping for. Maybe the kids were tucked in already, safe and warm. Maybe, despite the tension, my parents had found a shred of decency for one evening. But the moment I stepped through the front door, that fragile hope shattered. The smell hit me first, microwave pizza and cheap boxed wine. Then came the sound. A distant giggle glass clinking, the hum of reality TV coming from the family room. I set my coat on the rack and stepped forward, my heels silent on the worn hardwood. As I turned the corner into the dining area, I froze. Ari and Leela were sitting on the floor cross-legged, their dinner spread out on flimsy paper plates. No placemats, no chairs, no napkins. Their juice boxes sat beside them unopened. Meanwhile, just feet away, Michelle's 3 kids, Mia, Max, and baby Nora, sat perched at the dining table, plates neatly arranged, cloth napkins folded, little forks and knives placed just so. Even Nora had her toddler plate secured on a booster seat, her little hand gripping a spoon as she flung applesauce into her curls. Michelle lounged at the head of the table, legs crossed, a half glass of red wine in her hand and smug satisfaction in her eyes. "You're back early," she said, not even bothering to hide her grin. "Don't worry, we fed your kids." My mouth opened, then closed. Ari looked up at me, his voice small. We didn't want to make trouble, Mama. Grandma said there weren't enough chairs. Leela wiped her mouth with the back of her hand and added, so we said we could sit on the floor, it's okay. But it wasn't okay. I turned slowly toward the table where my mother sat stirring her decaf coffee, expression unreadable. My father flipped channels with the remote, feet propped up like nothing was wrong. No one met my eyes. Michelle's wine glass twirled between her fingers. That's what they deserve, she said lightly, like she was commenting on the weather. Maybe next time you'll plan better. I felt the words land somewhere deep in my chest, not like a slap but like a scalpel. Cold, precise. Designed to wound beneath the surface. I looked at my children again. Leela's hair was frizzy from static. Ari had a tomato stain on his shirt. Both of them sat politely, too politely, in a house that just told them they weren't welcome at the table. And no one had lifted a finger to stop it. Not my mother. Not my father. Not even the sister whose kids were now licking chocolate, putting off fancy spoons that I had bought last Christmas. I didn't yell. I didn't scream. Instead, I knelt beside my children and said softly, "Let's go home." Ari blinked. "But we are home." "No, sweetheart," I said, brushing hair from Leela's forehead. "Not anymore." I helped them gather their backpacks and light jackets. Neither child said a word. They moved with the heavy silence of kids who knew, instinctively, that something had broken that night and it wasn't their fault. Michelle raised her glass in a mock toast as I passed. "Thanks for dinner, sis." I didn't even glance at her. As I walked my children out into the cool night air, my mother's voice trailed behind me with a familiar bite. "Casey, don't be dramatic." But I was already shutting the door. In the car, Ari whispered, "Are you mad at Grandma?" "No," I said, buckling Leela's seatbelt with trembling hands. "I'm done being mad, I'm just done." The drive home was quiet. Leela fell asleep before we reached the highway, thumb tucked against her cheek. Ari watched the city lights blur past, his gaze distant. I pulled into our driveway and turned off the engine. For a moment, I just sat there, staring out at the porch light I'd left on, the safe yellow glow warming the path to the front door. My hands were shaking. Not from rage, from clarity. Something had shifted tonight. Subtly but irreversibly. I had seen the truth in that living room, the choice my family made to show my children they weren't welcome, the ease with which they humiliated them in my absence, and the smug certainty that I would, as always, accept it. But they'd miscalculated. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about them, my kids. And I was going to teach them something Michelle's children would never learn in that house. That you do not sit on the floor for people who won't make room at the table. The next morning, sunlight poured through the wide windows of my home office, bright and almost offensively cheerful, as if the universe hadn't just watched my children eat dinner on the floor. I sat at my desk in silk pajamas, coffee untouched beside my keyboard. The house was quiet. Ari and Leela were still asleep upstairs. For once, I hadn't rushed to wake them. I'd called in late to work. Not because I couldn't handle a boardroom. Because today required something colder. I opened my laptop and logged into my banking dashboard. 4 accounts. 2 joint credit cards. 1 auto draft arrangement for my parents' utilities. 1 secondary card under Michelle's name. Temporary, she'd said 2 years ago when her bakery idea failed. Temporary, I stared at the numbers. For years, I had convinced myself it was generosity, that I was the stable one, the capable one, the daughter who could shoulder more, but last night clarified something painful. Generosity without respect is just permission to be used. I clicked on the first credit card. Authorized users, Leonard Bitkeys, Eleanor Bitkeys, Michelle Bitkeys. My jaw tightened. I hovered over the option. Remove authorized user. A confirmation window popped up. "Are you sure?" "Yes," I whispered. Click, Leonard, removed. Click, Eleanor, removed. Michelle. I paused for a breath, then clicked, gone. Next card, repeat. Then I navigated to the autopay settings. Parents' electricity, cancelled. Parents' internet, cancelled. Michelle's car insurance supplement, cancelled. Each click felt less like revenge and more like correction. Like adjusting something that had been tilted for years. By the time I finished, the coffee beside me had gone cold. My phone buzzed. Once, twice, then repeatedly. I didn't even have to look. But I did. Family group chat, Sunday dinners, red heart. Michelle, what happened to the card? Dad, I'm at the pharmacy, it's declined. Mom, Casey, is this a mistake? Call me immediately. Michelle, are you serious right now? Another buzz. Michelle, I'm literally standing here with 3 kids and a full cart. Dad, the cashier says insufficient authorization. Mom, Casey, this is humiliating. I leaned back slowly in my chair. Humiliating, the word echoed. Like sitting on the floor with a paper plate, another buzz. Michelle, Casey. I picked up my phone. For the first time in years, my hands weren't shaking. They were steady. I typed calmly. I guess now you'll know what it's like to have nothing served at the table. 3 dots appeared instantly. Michelle, you are insane. Dad, after everything we've done for you. I let out a small, humorless laugh. Everything they'd done for me. Mom called, I declined it. She called again, declined, then came the voice message. Casey, sweetheart, I'm sure this is just some emotional overreaction. We all had a tense night. There's no need to lash out financially. Please fix this immediately. Lash out. That was interesting. I hadn't yelled. I hadn't threatened. I had simply removed access to money that belonged to me. Another message came in, this time from Michelle directly. Michelle, you're punishing us over a little seating arrangement. Grow up. I stared at that sentence. Little seating arrangement. That's what she thought it was. I typed back privately. This was never about chairs. She responded almost instantly. Michelle, then what is it about? I didn't answer right away. Instead, I stood from my desk and walked to the window. Outside, our quiet suburban street looked exactly the same as yesterday. Sprinklers ticking. A dog barking 2 houses down. A jogger passing by with headphones in. Nothing looked different, but everything was. My phone buzzed again. Dad, you've made your point. Reactivate the cards, made my point. No, this wasn't a point. This was a boundary. I finally responded in the group chat. This was about how you decided my children were beneath yours. Financial access ends today. If you need money, you'll have to earn it. Silence. No typing dots. No immediate outrage, just quiet. And in that silence, something subtle shifted. For the first time, they weren't in control of the narrative. They couldn't guilt me with raised voices or dismiss me with sarcasm, because money had always been the invisible leash, and I had just cut it. Upstairs, I heard soft footsteps, Ari's door opening. Mama, he called sleepily. I locked my phone and closed the laptop. Yes, baby. Can we have pancakes today? I smiled gently. Yeah, I said. We absolutely can. As I walked out of my office and toward the kitchen, my phone buzzed one last time. Mom, we need to talk. Oh, I knew we did. And this time it wasn't going to be on their terms. 2 days passed. 2 days of quiet mornings with the kids. 2 days without a single call answered, not a text replied to, just space, necessary space. I focused on routines, pancakes with too many chocolate chips, walks to the park, Ari's Lego cities, Leela's princess drawings stuck to the fridge with magnets. I hadn't realized how much of my time had been spent bracing for the next request, the next guilt trip, the next emergency. Now the quiet tasted like oxygen, until the thudding sound of tires crunching over gravel pulled me back to reality. I was rinsing dishes when I saw their car through the window, the dusty silver sedan with a cracked front headlight, the one I'd paid to repair twice, the one I told them last year to replace before it became unsafe. They hadn't. I dried my hands and stepped onto the porch before the engine even shut off. My parents were out of the car in seconds. Mom adjusted her oversized sunglasses like she was stepping onto a stage. Dad slammed the door a little harder than necessary. And Michelle trailed behind them in black leggings and a pale pink hoodie, arms crossed, jaw tight. None of them looked uncertain. They looked entitled. Casey, Mom started, with that rehearsed mix of hurt and authority. What on earth is going on? I think you know. You've blocked your entire family over nothing. Nothing, I repeated slowly. Michelle rolled her eyes. Oh, please, don't act like your kids were traumatized. They ate pizza, on a rug. My kids eat on the floor all the time. You have a house with 4 living rooms, Michelle, I said evenly. Don't pretend this was casual. I offered them chairs, she snapped. After yours were already seated and served, I asked, my voice calm, controlled. After you watched them hesitate because they didn't want to ask to be treated equally, Dad stepped forward. We think you're blowing this way out of proportion, cutting off the credit cards, canceling the auto payments. That's not just childish, Casey, it's cruel. Cruel, I said, a slow bitterness crawling up my throat. Cruel is watching my children sit on a hardwood floor while you all pretended they didn't deserve better. They weren't hurt, Michelle insisted. They were quiet, I corrected. Difference? Mom shifted her weight, clearly trying a new tactic. You've always had a flair for drama, sweetheart. You let your emotions run wild and now you're punishing everyone because of some bruised ego. I held her gaze. This was never about my ego, it was about dignity. And the moment you decided my kids didn't deserve a seat at your table, you lost yours. For the first time, there was a flicker behind her eyes, not remorse, but surprise. Like she hadn't expected me to be so. Still so sure, Dad ran a hand down his face. We didn't mean to send a message. But you did, I cut in. Loud and clear, Michelle threw her arms up. So what now? You just freeze us out, act like we're strangers. No, I said, I'm acting like someone who's finally awake. Mom's voice hardened. You're going to ruin this family dynamic over a tantrum. You mean the dynamic where I pay for everyone's life, get nothing in return, and smile while you humiliate my kids. That's not fair, Michelle started. No, I said, cutting her off again. What's not fair is the fact that I've paid off your credit debt twice and you still sneer like I owe you something. What's not fair is my children being treated like outsiders in a house where I once paid the mortgage. The wind kicked up slightly, rustling the edge of the welcome mat under my feet. For a second, no one spoke. Then Mom stepped forward, her voice low, almost soft. We're family, Casey. Don't let this spiral. I folded my arms. Then maybe you should have acted like it. Michelle's face flushed. So that's it? You think you're better than us because you have a big job and a fancy title? You always loved being the martyr. I stared at her for a long moment. No, Michelle, I loved believing that one day you'd treat me like your equal. That shut her up. Behind her, Dad glanced toward the house. Are the kids home? No, I said. And I wouldn't invite you in even if they were. Another beat of silence. Mom straightened her sunglasses again. We came here to fix things, but if you're going to be hostile, you came here to reclaim control, I said coolly. Not to apologize. And with that, I stepped back into the doorway. They have names, you know, I added, hand on the knob. Ari, Leela, try remembering them next time you serve dinner. Then I closed the door, not slammed, closed, clean, final, controlled. Behind it, I didn't cry, I breathed. And in that breath, I felt something shift again. Not rage, not pain, but something quieter, power. It was a quiet Wednesday afternoon when I opened my finance binder and turned to the final tab, insurance premiums. A little yellow sticky note was still stuck to the top of the page. Thanks again for doing this for me. I'll take it over next quarter. Promise. Michelle's handwriting. Cursive hearts over her eyes. That next quarter had come and gone almost 9 times now. I stared at the page for a long moment, listening to the soft whir of the dishwasher and the sound of Leela giggling upstairs. Then I picked up the phone. Hi, this is Casey Bitkeys. I'd like to cancel a family member's dependent health policy. The woman on the other end confirmed my identity and started clicking away. Can you confirm the policyholder's name? Michelle Bitkeys. Another pause. And your relationship to the policyholder? I answered flatly. Sister. Former financial sponsor. She didn't ask for more. She just processed the cancellation with the same brisk efficiency I'd always admired in administrative people. I watched the account refresh. The final confirmation banner appeared on screen. Dependent plan, terminated, that was it. No fanfare, no mess, just a line item gone. No part of me felt triumphant. Only clean. A week later, around 6:30 p.m., I was folding laundry on the couch while Ari argued with Leela about who got to choose the movie. My phone buzzed. Michelle, I ignored it. Then it buzzed again, a text this time. Michelle, did you cancel my insurance? No greeting, no punctuation, no acknowledgement of the silence she herself had created. Another text followed seconds later. Michelle, I'm in urgent care. They just told me my coverage isn't active. The nurse looked at me like I was scamming them. What the hell? I stared at the message, then typed back calmly. You said you'd take it over. 9 quarters ago. Michelle, I had a panic attack. They're refusing care unless I pay up front. I had to put $400 on Trevor's card. Another message followed. Michelle, what kind of person does this to their own sister? I didn't reply. I just scrolled through my browser tabs until I found the one I'd opened earlier. A small local boutique was hiring. A front desk coordinator, flexible hours, decent benefits, walkable from Michelle's house. I screenshotted the listing and attached it to my reply. You'd better find a job. She read it instantly, those little delivered and read receipts blinking back at me like headlights. No reply. I sat back on the couch, folding the last pair of tiny socks and listening to the sound of the kids settling in for movie night. There was no satisfaction in knowing she'd been embarrassed. There was only a shift in balance. A long overdue correction to a system that had been crooked since the start. And unlike Michelle, I hadn't done it in public. She'd felt it in the cold fluorescent lights of an urgent care intake form, and in the silence that followed. The next morning, I woke up to 3 missed calls, 5 texts from coworkers who never text outside office hours, and a screenshot from Maya with no message, just the image. Michelle's face. Tear-streaked. Eyes red, lips pouted just enough to scream vulnerable, and in the caption below, "When your own family betrays you, broken heart, some wounds don't bleed, they just bruise your soul forever." Family is supposed to mean something. Some people are heartless. I just needed help. There were already dozens of comments. "You don't deserve this, girl. Stay strong." OMG, who would do that to their own sister? "Let me know if you need anything, Queen. You're not alone." Not a single person asked for context. Not one mentioned the unpaid credit cards, the free nannying, the rent-free living, or the fact that I'd pulled her out of more financial fires than I could count. Michelle knew exactly what she was doing, and she knew better than to tag me. I stared at the screen for a moment, then set the phone down, face down, and walked to the window. It was a beautiful day. The kind of morning that smelled like freshly cut grass and clean starts. The light slid across the hardwood floors like a warm tide, and just beyond the window, parked in my driveway, was a Lexus with a RE Max magnet on the side. Right on time. "Casey," the woman called as I opened the door. "Wow, I love what you've done with this place. Still smells like new hardwood. I can't believe they've never refinished theirs." Her name was Harper. Mid-40s, quick smile, firm handshake. I'd met her at an open house last fall and kept her card, just in case. The kind of just in case I never believed I'd actually act on. I led her through the house with a calm, efficient energy. The kitchen was exactly as I remembered it from childhood: faux oak cabinets, cluttered counters, the same crooked spice rack Dad never fixed. But this time I didn't feel small in it. Harper pulled out the listing packet. "So you legally co-own the property?" I nodded. "After I helped them avoid foreclosure 6 years ago, they added me to the deed. A joint ownership arrangement. They never bothered to refinance." "Smart," she said with a half smile. "For you, I mean. Most people wouldn't think ahead like that." I didn't respond. I just walked to the island counter, brushed aside an old grocery circular, and tapped the space next to the listing agreement. "It's time." She slid the papers forward. "Just sign here and we'll get the photos and lockbox scheduled. I'd estimate a full market value sale within 3 weeks tops." "Let's list it aggressively," I said. "Below market, I want attention." Harper paused. "You sure?" I looked around. The hallway where I learned to walk. The dining room where I was told to let Michelle shine during every birthday toast. The den where I sat one Christmas Eve, excluded from the group photo because I was in the way. "I'm sure." As I signed the papers, I could almost hear it, not a sound exactly, but the internal click of something finally snapping into alignment. It wasn't about money. It was about leverage. And legacy. Theirs was built on my silence. Mine was about to be built on something else entirely. Truth. That afternoon, Michelle posted a follow-up, a black and white photo of her hugging Nora, captioned, "I'll protect my kids from toxicity at any cost." Meanwhile, I was scheduling a photographer to take wide-angle shots of the property she still believed would be her inheritance. She had no idea the ground beneath her was already shifting. But she would. Soon. 3 days later, I stood across the street, coffee in hand, and watched the FOR sale sign sink into the front lawn like a final nail in a family-sized coffin. It was early, just after 8 a.m., and the neighborhood was starting to stir. Sprinklers ticked on. A woman in leggings walked her labradoodle. A couple of cars rolled out of driveways headed toward school drop-offs and commutes. Harper's assistant waved as the wooden sign was staked down, crisp white letters declaring the truth in bold red. Available, it felt. Clean, like a window had finally been opened in a room that had smelled like denial for too long. I turned to leave, satisfied, but I didn't make it down the block before the first email hit my inbox. Subject line, "Cease this madness." I didn't have to read the sender's name to know who it was. I tapped it open anyway. "Casey, we are absolutely appalled by your behavior. Selling this home, our family's legacy, without proper discussion is not only cruel, it may be illegal. We are speaking with a lawyer and exploring options to remove your name from the deed if your mental state continues to deteriorate. You need help, emotional help. This is not how healthy people behave. If you have any dignity left, take that sign down before you make this any worse. No love, Mom. No, please talk to us. Just accusations and projection, gift-wrapped in entitlement. I marked it unread and filed it in a folder I'd already named, Emotional Warfare. I wasn't even home 20 minutes before the yelling started. I heard the commotion from the kitchen, shouts echoing off pavement, footsteps pounding across my front lawn. I opened the door slowly, bracing. Michelle stood at the edge of my driveway in joggers and a twisted ponytail, rage practically steaming off her skin. She looked feral, eyes wild, chest heaving. "You think you can just erase people?" she shrieked. "Is this your big revenge fantasy? Put a sign up and wash your hands clean of everything," her voice carried. A few neighbors peeked out through blinds. One older couple 2 houses down paused on their morning walk, whispering as they passed. "Go home, Michelle," I said flatly. She stormed closer. "That house was supposed to be our family's safety net. You think selling it makes you righteous or something, makes you better than the rest of us?" I didn't flinch. "No, but it makes me free." Her mouth fell open for a second, like she hadn't expected me to actually own it. From behind her, I spotted our father marching up the sidewalk, breathless and red-faced. "You better think carefully about what you're doing, Casey. You're sabotaging your own future. No one's going to want you after this. No partner, no kids, you're burning every bridge you have." I looked at him for a long, hard second. Then I stepped out onto the porch. "I was 8 the first time you told me I was selfish for not letting Michelle have my new doll," I said. 12 when you told me I needed to keep the peace because she was more emotional. 17 when you blamed me for her skipping school. And 31 when you let her humiliate my children and said nothing. My voice didn't rise, not once. "Do you want to talk about bridges?" I asked. "Because the only ones I ever built were one way, and you all were the ones walking over me." He looked stunned. Not guilty, just surprised I'd kept count. Michelle opened her mouth again, but I cut her off. "You can yell," I said. "You can throw tantrums. You can write me off to every cousin, neighbor, and stranger on the internet, but none of that changes the deed." I pulled out a copy of the listing agreement from behind the door and held it up. "My name is on the house. My name is on the sale. And unless you come up with the money to buy me out, this is happening." Across the street, a neighbor's front door creaked open. A teenage girl stepped out, phone angled discreetly toward us. Michelle noticed. "Oh my God," she hissed. "You've made a spectacle of this. You're ruining our reputation." I gave her the barest smile. "That happened the moment you left my kids on the floor and handed yours a feast." Then I walked back inside and closed the door. I didn't slam it. I didn't lock it. I didn't need to. Because the next time they stepped foot on my property, they'd have 30 days or less. And this time, I wouldn't be the one cleaning up the mess. 3 days passed in brittle silence. No more public blow-ups. No more emails laced with blame or hashtags weaponized in my direction. It was as if someone had hit mute on the entire family. But I knew the next strike was already in motion, and it didn't come in the form of shouting. It came in a thick white envelope, hand-delivered by courier to the Bitkeys' home just after noon. Return service requested notice to vacate / option to purchase. The envelope bore all the formal weight of the truth I had been carrying for years. I owned 1/3 of that house, and I no longer wanted to. Inside was a certified eviction notice. A simple offer: buy me out at market value or vacate the premises within 30 days. I didn't include a letter. No explanation. No emotion. Just the math. The math was always what mattered to them anyway. That night, the house across town, my former childhood home, looked almost normal from the outside. Porch light on, garage door shut. But inside, something had shifted. Michelle's kids were quiet. No TikTok music blaring from their phones. No screaming over game controllers. Neighbors wouldn't have known anything was wrong, but I did. Maya drove past the house around 8 p.m. on her way back from work and texted me. "All the lights are on, but no one's in the front room. Looks like a funeral." That image stayed with me. Inside, I imagined my mother sitting stiff-backed in her armchair, reading the letter with pursed lips and quiet disbelief. My father pacing, red-faced, his voice rising before falling again, unable to find a solution he could yell into existence. And Michelle's door was locked. The only sound from her room, the occasional muffled sob, not performative for once, not loud, just real. It was the sound of someone realizing the safety net was not made of rope but paper. Fragile, flammable, the kind of sob that rises when the world no longer bends for you. No one called me that night, not even to curse me out, not even to fake clarity. I think that scared them more than anything else, the quiet. For years, they had controlled the narrative. If I cried, I was dramatic. If I argued, I was difficult. If I forgave too quickly, I was their doormat. But now, I said nothing. And silence, as it turns out, is a powerful teacher. Michelle didn't post that night. No black and white filtered sob stories. No cryptic captions or pity-seeking screenshots of texts out of context. She disappeared from her digital stage completely. The inbox that once overflowed with guilt-laced messages sat still. And though no one dared text me again, I could almost feel their thoughts building. What if she really goes through with this? What if she doesn't back down this time? The next morning, I received an alert from the listing platform. New interest. 4 saved searches for the Bitkeys property. Buyers were circling. And the house, once considered untouchable, was now just inventory. I stared at the message on my screen for a long moment, my coffee untouched beside me. All it would take was one signature. One final offer. And then they'd be out. Unless, of course, they took the other option. The harder one. The unthinkable one, apologize, but I knew them. That word, it would stick in their throats like glass. The morning sun was harsh, unforgiving, almost theatrical as it spilled across the lawn of the Bitkeys' home. My mother used to call it golden hour, when the light made everything look soft and warm. But there was nothing warm about this. Today was a showing day. Harper had lined up 5 back-to-back viewings with pre-qualified buyers. The kind who wore polished shoes and asked about school districts and roof insulation. The kind who didn't know or care about family legacies, generational furniture, or the echo of old birthday songs that once filled these walls. They wanted square footage and clean lines. They wanted what my family had always taken for granted. The FOR sale sign stood proud, now with a bright red showing today banner fluttering beneath it. Harper arrived first, greeting me with her usual chipper professionalism, tablet in hand, heels clicking on the driveway like clockwork. And then they came. Not the buyers. Them. Michelle, my parents, and her 3 kids, all standing on the front curb like refugees from a life they still didn't believe was ending. My father had his arms crossed, eyes narrowed. My mother wore oversized sunglasses that failed to hide the clenched jaw beneath them. Michelle looked like a woman unraveling in real time. Her eyeliner smudged, her hoodie pulled over her head like a shield. They didn't speak at first. They just watched. Watched as Harper unlocked the front door. Watched as I walked beside her, clipboard in hand, cool as glass. The first family arrived, a young couple, both tech consultants, baby in a carrier. Michelle's face twitched as they passed her on the walkway, politely pretending not to notice the family lingering on the sidewalk like ghosts. After the second showing, Michelle broke. She marched up the walkway in thin sandals and desperation, her voice cracking before she even reached the porch. "You wouldn't actually do this," she choked, eyes wild. "Casey, come on, you're proving your point, okay? You win, you've punished us enough." I didn't flinch. I didn't soften. Instead, I looked her over, mascara streaked, sleeves tugged over her hands like a child, and let the silence stretch just long enough to make her squirm. Then I spoke, my voice low and level. "You left my children on the floor," she blinked. "I was at work trying to build something, and you, my sister, sat back while my kids were humiliated for being mine. You watched it happen." Her mouth opened, then closed. "And now," I continued, glancing behind her toward the patch of sun-scorched grass they'd all claimed as their mourning ground, "you're in the dirt." Michelle turned as if to appeal to our parents, but neither stepped forward. My mother stared fixedly at her shoes. My father shifted his weight but said nothing. "You've made your point," Michelle whispered. "What are we supposed to do?" "Figure it out," I replied. Like I always had to. Another car pulled into the driveway. A middle-aged woman in a tailored blazer stepped out, shaking hands with Harper. Michelle's voice lowered. "There are kids here, Casey, mine." I tilted my head. "You should have thought about that before you decided mine didn't matter." That landed. I saw it in the way her shoulders sagged, the way her hands twitched at her sides like they were searching for something, dignity maybe, or the upper hand she'd always counted on having. But that hand was gone. And the house behind us, it was no longer home. It was property, inventory, a tangible reminder that I didn't need revenge that screamed. I just needed one that left a paper trail. As Michelle stepped back onto the lawn, Harper leaned over and murmured, "The next buyer's ready." Should I walk them through the bedrooms? Absolutely, I said. I glanced at the house one last time. The paint was still chipped on the porch rail. The curtain in the front window still hung slightly crooked. My dad never fixed that, even when I offered. He didn't believe in effort until the consequences arrived. Well, they had, and they were right on time. It happened just before noon. The trucks rolled in without warning, at least not to them. But I had scheduled everything meticulously, down to the hour. 2 moving crews. 3 strong men each. Paid by me, of course. Not because I was doing them a favor, because I wanted it done fast, clean, public, the kind of spectacle they could never spin. The neighbors came out first, pretending to check their mail or walk their dogs. Suburban curiosity disguised as routine. They lingered at the edges of driveways, watching in quiet disbelief as box after box was carried out of the Bitkeys' home. A floral love seat. 3 cracked bins of children's toys. The antique dresser my grandmother had once called her pride. All of it lined up like an estate sale, but no one was buying. Michelle sat on the front steps, face streaked with tears, her phone limp in her hand. Her oldest, Max, was asking questions she couldn't answer. The younger 2 just clung to her legs, wide-eyed and confused. My father paced the lawn, red-faced and muttering under his breath, occasionally barking at the movers like he still had authority. He didn't, and he knew it. "Casey," he called, storming toward me as I stood beside Harper near the moving van. "This is excessive. You could have handled this privately, quietly." "So could you," I said without looking at him. "We're family," he spat. I smiled thinly. "That never stopped you from leaving my kids on the floor." He opened his mouth, some defense locked and loaded, but I turned away before he could launch it. I didn't need to hear it. I'd heard it all before. Every excuse, every reframe, every twisted attempt to make me the villain in a story they wrote with their own hands. Today, I wasn't their daughter. I was the property owner. By sunset, the moving trucks were gone. The lawn was littered with boxes, 2 sad camping tents pitched awkwardly near the curb, temporary shelter Michelle had begged my father to set up when they realized their motel reservation fell through. Something about a declined card. I didn't ask for details. Let them sit in that silence. Let the same neighbors who used to sip wine with my mother now whisper about how the Bitkeys family had fallen on hard times. Let the children of this street, who used to wave at Grandpa Leonard, watch him unpack Tupperware from a milk crate like any other tenant who thought the rules didn't apply. At dusk, I drove past slowly. Windows down. Michelle looked up from the grass as I passed, her face lit by the dim glow of a street lamp. She didn't scream this time. Didn't beg. She just stared. Maybe now she understood. I hadn't come for her children. I had come to defend mine. It was a quiet Tuesday morning when the knock came. Soft, hesitant. Almost like the person on the other side wasn't sure they deserved to be there. I opened the door and found Michelle standing on my porch. Alone. No children clinging to her legs, no cell phone pressed dramatically to her cheek. No audience, no performance, just Michelle. Eyes swollen, hoodie pulled up again like a defense mechanism she'd long since outgrown. And for the first time in a long time, she didn't look like a threat. She looked like someone who had run out of fight. "Can I come in?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. I nodded once and stepped aside. She walked in slowly, glancing around as if the house might bite her. We stood in the kitchen like 2 women who hadn't known each other most of their lives, strangers in a house built on blood ties. "I didn't come to argue," she said quietly. "I'm not here to fix anything, I just wanted to say something without everyone else around." I gestured toward the table. "Sit." She did. I poured us both coffee. The silence stretched between us, not heavy this time, but cautious, like it needed to be earned. She cupped the mug with both hands, staring into it like it could tell her what to say. Then she looked up at me, her voice rough but steady. "You were right." I didn't react, just waited. I always felt like I had something to prove. Like if I didn't take, I'd disappear. Mom and Dad never said it out loud, but we both knew who got the applause in that house. Who was allowed to be loud. Who got defended even when they were wrong. She swallowed hard. They built me that way, but I didn't have to stay that way. That hit harder than I expected. She stared at her cup again. "It's not just about the house. Or the money. I don't even know if I deserve to ask for anything right now. I just wanted you to know I see it now. What we did, what I did." Still, I said nothing. Not because I didn't believe her, but because I wanted the silence to stretch just enough to test if she'd stay in it with me. She did. Finally, I spoke. "The house sale is paused." Her head snapped up. But only because this felt real, I said softly. And I've had a lot of fake apologies. You don't get a pass for crying, but you get a chance if you stay honest. Tears welled up in her eyes again, but this time she didn't try to hide them. I stood and pulled a tissue from the counter, set it in front of her. Michelle, I said gently, I don't want you to beg, I want you to change. I'm trying, she whispered. For them, I added. For your kids. She nodded, a single motion that felt more solid than any paragraph she could have given me. We sat there for a while, drinking lukewarm coffee in a house that, for once, didn't feel like a battlefield. Maybe it wouldn't be home again, but it wasn't war anymore. 6 months later, the Bitkeys' house looks different. Not bigger, not fancier, just lighter. The ivy's been trimmed back. The porch finally painted. That crooked curtain in the front window replaced. Leela chose the new ones, yellow with tiny sunflowers. She said they looked like happy secrets. Inside, things had shifted in quieter ways. Michelle found a job, part-time, front desk at a pediatric clinic. Nothing flashy, but she clocked in. Paid her share, packed her kids' lunches herself. She didn't whine when things were tight, didn't pout when responsibility felt heavy. She carried it, finally. My parents still lived upstairs, but the power dynamic that once ruled the house had crumbled. There were no more backhanded comments about being dramatic, no more smirks passed at the dinner table. Because now we had rules. Real ones. On a warm Friday night, I called everyone to the table. Michelle's kids, mine, even mom and dad, all sitting elbow to elbow around mismatched plates. It wasn't elegant, but it was equal. New rules, I said, pouring water into the last glass. No one spoke, they just waited. 1, every child eats at the table, every time, no exceptions. Leela grinned. Max nodded solemnly. 2, if someone needs help, we ask, we don't expect, and we never ever assume. Michelle's eyes lowered slightly. She didn't argue. And 3, I said, setting the pitcher down. No one gets to stay silent when something's wrong, not anymore. The table was still for a moment until Ari raised his hand unsure. What if it's not big wrong, he asked. Just kinda wrong. Then we speak up gently, I said, but we still speak. Around that table, for the first time in years, I saw what could be built, not from guilt or silence, but from choice. And that was peace. That was the end of the story. I keep thinking about the moment Michelle chose to show up alone, without excuses or an audience, and admit she was wrong. Do you think she did the right thing by finally taking responsibility, or have you ever done something similar to repair a relationship? Tell me in the comments, and if this story meant something to you, please like and subscribe so you don't miss the next one.